because I was a lot better at filming than I was at skating. So that's kind of how it all started. And then my love for like filming skating boiled down to like, all right, well, what do you do with this footage now? You got to edit it. Now, how do you edit it? Which programs? Like, I remember the day I learned that you can unattach the audio in the video was like the beaming light. I was like, this is how this makes so much sense now. Because I never knew you can do that. I was like, you could detach it, and then that's how they do like L cuts or like, voiceovers or, stuff like that. So all through like skateboarding, which is like the unconscious like trial and error of where I'm at today. Because at that point in time, I never thought that this would be a thing.
Welcome back to Have a Map, where we talk all things career. I'm your host, Mamadou Njai, here in New York on a gloomy, what is today, Thursday. But before we get started, I want to introduce my co-host for today, Henry, who actually is very interesting. He started this internship pre-COVID, and then COVID happened, and then now he's back during the pandemic. So it's been interesting to see the internship change and shift. So I'm sure we'll talk a little bit about that. But Henry, go ahead, introduce yourself real quick.
Sure. So my name is Henry Stevens. I am a current senior at Loyola University Chicago studying film and digital media production. So I kind of have a background in videography and photography that kind of started in high school, maybe a little earlier, just kind of doing some home projects, shooting photography around the city or in my hometown of LaGrange and back in San Francisco, which is where I'm originally from. I'm a video intern here, so I work a lot on these podcasts as well as some of the other video projects that we do with a lot of different people. I have a good background in editing. I've done some work in music videos with other production companies and just a lot of short films for school. So that's just a little bit of a background on me.
Dope. And he's a sneaker enthusiast, just like me. So we can talk about that. And now let's get to our guest for today. So we have Jesse coming in, and we're going to talk a little bit about the film industry. But before we do that, Jesse, can you introduce yourself? Tell us a little bit about you, where you're calling in from.
Yeah, hello. My name is Jesse. I'm a film director based in Los Angeles. I'm originally from the Bay Area. I lived in Vallejo for 20 years and then moved to LA when I was 20, and I'm 29 now. So I've been here for 9 years. I mainly do a little bit of long and short form narrative, music video, commercial, a little bit of docuseries stuff, but mainly in short form content right now.
Dope. And, my business partner is actually from the Bay Area. He's from Oakland. So
okay, so
familiar. He's taking me around that area.
Yeah, we're neighbors.
You said what?
We're neighbors.
Oh yeah, definitely. Well, let's talk a little bit about the work that you're doing, right? Because, we hear about these different filming ideas or filming things that you're doing, advertisements, short films. But some people who are new, and especially some of our listeners, are trying to see, like, what does that mean that you actually do? Like, what are you doing? What does that look like? What are some of the skill sets that you need to get into that space? So can we talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely.
Let's start with diving into what does it look like on like maybe a day-to-day space for working on a project that you're doing.
So it all starts with pre-production, man. I mean, I guess if you want to start before pre-production, it's landing the project, which I feel like is 80% of the battle. It's a lot of phone calls, a lot of creative briefs and treatments, which is pretty much selling your idea to either the creative agency, production company, management, video commissioner, whoever is your plug for the project. You're pretty much battling against in the music video world, it's a bunch of different directors, and in the commercial world, it's usually 3. So that's like the first step. It's just getting in the door with your idea. And then once you get in the door with your idea, from there, it's now selling yourself and why you feel like this is the best road to go, why they should be confident in your ability to execute within also the confines of implementing their ideas, their artists or agency ideas, and just making sure the whole piece has a skeleton. And your job is just to drive it from A to Z and make sure that it stays as close and true to the project that everyone signed up for.
Wow. And some of the things that you mentioned that, maybe a few of, I always like to kind of like help our listeners string along to some of the stuff that our guests are talking about. But you talked about a few different areas of where you can even get those projects. So you talked about agencies, you talked about, artists, things of that nature. And it seems to be like a lot of juggling of people's ideas of something that might be in their head that you have to visualize and put into production. So what is that like?
So, I mean, it always boils down to creativity versus time versus budget. And usually it boils down to time versus budget because creativity is so open-ended. There's no rules. There's very little walls when it comes to that. So now it all has to confine within your time, expectation, and budget. So really, it's just trying to be the mediator and finding the nicest way to either turn down or accept ideas that are going to fit within both of those confines. And then to talk about like, one of the questions you asked is where to get the projects. I mean, the beautiful part about the arts industry in itself, and specifically the entertainment industry, is there's really no handbook on how to break in or start. Or you can't just go to Barnes and Noble or go online and buy a book and it's like, here's how to make it. And I mean, there are books like that, but it's the Wild West. You could do it however you want it. I know artists and directors and producers that have direct relationships with the artist or the brand, and they just work directly with them. And there's other people that have relationships with like an agency, or they're signed to an agency or a production company, and they're a part of their roster, which now they're implementing into their ecosystem. So any briefs that they get, a brief is like, a solicitation from a company that's like, hey, here's our project, here's our budget. Who do you have that would best fit? So becoming a part of those rosters is probably one of the first steps. And I'm not even saying it's the first step, because I've done projects just direct to, the agency, or direct to the brand, or direct to the artist. Like, you don't have to be on with an agency or a production company to do stuff. I've been a solo agent for 7 years. I just started getting into this world.
No, that's amazing, because it's tough, right? As someone who works with agencies and different production companies, it can be tough to figure out how to get there. But once you get into it, it's all about networking, consistently building up those connections. And even, I'm sure, sometimes you get hit up on social media just because of some of the stuff that you post as well. So I know all those things can play a big part into it.
Yeah, I've been trying to get a little bit better at social media. So I'm trying.
That's an uphill battle. I think we all are.
Yeah.
So kind of jumping off that, could you maybe just give us a little bit of a background into your history? Like, where did you start? When did you start? Like, what kind of got you interested in this realm of film? Because I know it's a thing that a lot of people like who doesn't like a great movie, a great video, things like that. But what got you interested in being in that creative process?
So what I would have to say, if we're going to boil it down to a very basic term, is skateboarding. My friends were so much better than skateboarding than I was. So they'd be going downstairs and doing lines, and I could do a little bit of stuff, but nothing compared to them. And then I was always gravitated towards filming it because I was a lot better at filming than I was at skating. So that's kind of how it all started. And then my love for filming skating boiled down to all right, well, what do you do with this footage now? You got to edit it. Now, how do you edit it? Which programs? I remember the day I learned that you can unattach the audio and the video was like the beaming light. I was like, this is how this makes so much sense now, because I never knew you can do that. I was like, you could detach it, and then that's how they do L cuts or voiceovers or stuff like that. So all through skateboarding was just the unconscious trial and error of where I'm at today, because at that point in time I never thought that this would be a thing. So thinking back on it now, that was all just boot camp.
Definitely. I feel like that's become such a big thing in modern culture. There's always that intersection, or at least that's kind of developed. And kind of looking back at a lot of the older skate footage, it's all of it is really beautifully shot. It's really, a lot of it is really technical. And I think that's definitely a great gateway into filmmaking. Thank you.
Yeah, you gotta learn frame rates, you gotta learn aspect ratio, you gotta learn codecs, you gotta learn how to get this off a tape or film. Like we were doing both tape and film. So it's like, how do you get it off that to digital? And then how do you process it? It was like the ultimate like low risk training camp to like learn all of the workflow and what makes it your workflow. So that was, I would say that, I mean, even before that, like we were filming random stuff with anybody's camera that we can borrow. I didn't even own a camera until I moved to LA. No, I had a T2i when I was like 18. I still have it. It's right there. But I didn't even own a camera until I was like an adult. So it was just wherever we can get a camera at, let's go borrow it. Who has a computer with an editing program? Let's go to their house and let's edit it.
And as you made that transition, when did you know that you wanted to start to like turn it into a business for yourself?
Okay, so this is going to backtrack a little bit, but I feel like in the 10th grade, I was taking a computer class as an elective, and my teacher, Mr. Plabani, at the end of the class was like, hey, I want to show you guys something. And he pulled out his computer and showed us a program called Avid Media Composer. And at that time, the movie 300 was like the best movie in the world. It still is phenomenal. But at the time, everyone was just like, how do I watch 300? Because it's rated R, everyone's in high school, it's like, but, and he was explaining to us that this was the program that 300 was edited on, Pirates of the Caribbean, like all the movies that we watch were edited on this program. And I was just like, how do you have it then? You know what I mean? Like, I was like, this doesn't make sense. And that was the peak of like research and development and just being like, okay, so how does my 10th grade English teacher have a program that $1 million films are edited on? Like, it didn't comprehend. So that was the beginning of like me trying to figure it out. And then the skateboarding was just what I did for fun. So like, if we can pinpoint like the start of it, it'd be there. And then the first time I got paid to do anything film related was I shot a music video for one of my friends back in the Bay Area. And I was like, I made more money and it was not that much. It was like $400, right? But I was like, I made more money in one day doing this than a whole week's worth of work. I was like, okay, I feel like I could do this. And I just started practicing from there, just doing like YouTube tutorials, like Video Copilot, Film Riot, like, the whole filmmaker entry pack, right? And then I just turned that into like what I thought and how I could apply it to what I wanted to do. Because I wanted to do things that were a little bit different than like the videos on MTV I was watching, or like the videos or the commercials that I was watching. I was like, it'd be cool if we did it this way. And now I had an outlet to do it that way. So like all those, ideas that I was having, I can now try it out in my backyard with my friends and just being like, okay, like what about this works and what doesn't work about it. So that was after that moment, I was like, all right, I'm about to go to LA and try this shit.
Dope. And would you say, because a lot of what you're saying, and a few things that I picked up is one, understanding what like was quote unquote industry standard. And then once you understood that, then you started to separate away from, what everyone else was doing and creating your own unique style within that. And how did you know to do that? Or was that just something that was inherently in you to try?
Well, there's two parts to it where like I started editing. I'm not going to like exaggerate. The first things I've edited on was like Windows Movie Maker or like, the consumer brand products. So, but the first program I dove into and was like, I'm going to learn this was Avid Media Composer. A lot of people start off in like Final Cut 7, then go to Premiere and then go to Avid. And I did it backwards because I was like, well, I don't want to spend the next 2 to 3 years like mastering these programs when I could just skip 3 to 4 years and master the one that essentially is the end goal. And I'm nowhere near a master at Avid at all whatsoever. Like if anything, I'm kind of rusty now, but That's what I started learning was like Avid. Like before I even had the program, I was watching YouTube tutorials. I was watching like Linda lessons, like anything I can find to like just. And then that's at that point, that's when I was like, I want to be a film editor because I was like, I can edit. I feel like I could tell a story. I understand pacing. I understand story arc, character arc. You know, I understand it enough to I feel like if I had the footage, I could put it together. But like I never had, you know, a feature's worth of footage. I just had short film stuff. So I learned on Avid, and I was like, instead of spending all my time learning all these other programs, I'll learn those later if I need to. But right now, I want to go for like the throat. So I'm learning Avid, and I'm going to go to market with that.
That's dope and very unique, but very dope. Like just a different perspective and outlook on that. So like now you're moving to LA, which is a very competitive market. And what was that transition like?
It was pretty, I mean, I'm from California, so it wasn't like a huge, I was blessed with the mentality that if it all went to shit, I could just drive 6 hours back home. I know there's people from like the Midwest, East Coast, the South that, you know, save up all their money to move to LA, and it's like this big thing. And like, you know, I always feel for people and I always try to help them out and do what I can to be of assistance, but I never had like that pressure because this is my home, like LA, San Francisco, like Humboldt, San Diego, like the entire West Coast is my home. I've been here my entire life. So the pressure to like stay here wasn't that high because I was like, if it all goes to shit, I could just go back home. And so that I guess I had the luxury of being able to really hyper focus on creative and like what I'm doing, how I'm doing it, what the conversion of what I'm doing is, and if something doesn't work, how do I make it better? So the burden of staying here wasn't like constricting my creative thought, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So I feel super appreciative and lucky to be from California and be from the West Coast. So that one element wasn't like on my shoulders the entire time I was here. Cause I know a lot of friends and I have a lot of friends that are from like Florida, you know, South America, Europe, everywhere around the world that come here. And that's like the first thing that they're always like, I gotta, you know, make sure I stay here. And that's a huge burden on people creatively. So I was always blessed with like that mentality that's like, if I fuck up, I could just go home.
Yeah.
And this is home. So like I'm already here. I'm pretty sure like if you're in New York, so you know, if you went from like New Jersey to Flatbush, it wouldn't be like this, you know, man, you know, I know that's like not the same distance, but that's kind of like how it felt for me, where I was like, I'm just going from SF to LA.
That makes a lot of sense. And with that ability, did that give you, because I'm always curious about like network, right? Like building off of that. Was that an easy networking transition for you where you already had people in LA that you could build a community with? Because I know that's so important of like having a community to build off of ideas and to create and get on shoots, maybe like as PAs, you know what I mean? Like in different roles and things of that nature.
So when I came to LA, I didn't know anybody. Like I had a cousin that lived out here, and she lived I don't even remember where she lived, like Long Beach or something, right? And that was really it, you know. And she worked in like insurance, so it wasn't even like I had a plug or anything. But I remember the very first day I came here, I moved to Burbank, and I was walking up the stairs with my stuff, and somebody, and his name's Adrian, and I still work with him today. He actually lives down the street from me. But as I was walking up, he was walking down, and like he introduced himself to me, and then we, you know, became friends. And then I don't know if it was like luck of the draw, but the apartment complex I moved into in Burbank, the person that lived above me was a motion graphics artist and like Cinema 4D and like Houdini and Maya and Flame. And he was like this crazy guy from Ethiopia that like just knew all these programs. And the person that lived below me was a sound and Foley artist. And the people that lived downstairs, one was a rapper and one was an engineer. And the guy that lived all the way across, he was another VFX artist. So I lived in like almost like a college style like cohort of just, but it was just like an apartment complex in Burbank. So like that was my first experience being in LA, and I had lived next to like people relatively around the same age as me. I think I was like the youngest, but that's kind of how it all started, which was like, well, what do you want to do? It's like, I want to be a film editor. And that just translated to everybody being there, also being in post-production. So it was very easy to like one of my first like big jobs was through somebody that worked at that apartment complex, because he said that one of his mentors was looking for an avid film editor to edit like his independent feature. And I was the only one in the complex that knew Avid. So he hooked me up with that person. I went, met with them. He like kind of had me assemble a project in Avid and build the structure. And he's like, okay, you know what you're doing. Let's do it. And that was the first like editing job I got. And that was also the last editing job I got, because it was that job where I learned I want to be a director.
Interesting. That's one, that's just like, I feel like you're ordained to be in that area with like that story. That's like too good to be true, where it's just like laid out for you to have those resources and to build like your own community, which is super, super dope. And then for you to get that first job there to show you what you really wanted to do. And I feel like that's what we always talk about in internships, or like internships, things of that nature. And when you think internships, I just think of it as experience. So any type of experience can get you to that space that you want to be in. I feel like that's so interesting that you did all of that. You realized, I don't even want to do this, which is great because you figured that out early rather than a lot later. And I think that probably set you on a even better trajectory.
Yeah. And just to clarify a little bit, I didn't just move here and then meet 10 people and then get an editing job. The editing job came like a year and a half, maybe even 2 years after I moved here. Before that, how I was like making money was the people that lived above me. One of them was a rapper and one of them was a producer, and they were just constantly making music like all day, every day. And then I went up there one day, just hang out with them, and they played me some music. I was like, you should shoot a music video for this. And he's like, do you want to do it? And I'm like, I've never like, I've shot one music video before. So I was like, all right, let's do it. And I did it for free. We just did it to do it. And then I used that piece, and like, I guess is the power of this entrepreneurship. But I just told everybody that he paid me $500 to do that video, because everyone that asked me, it was like, how much do you charge to do music videos? I was like, I did this one for $500. And I was like, if I could do like 3 or 4 music videos a month, I'm good. I could pay rent, I could buy a little bit of groceries, and I can keep this whole thing going, right? And that's what I did for a year, which is constantly like people seeing my work off of YouTube, people word of mouth, aggressive street marketing. Like I'd have all my videos on a phone, and everybody that I met, I was like, here, watch this one, watch this one, watch this one. I think this one like matches you. And then, just convert, just get people to like want to do projects, because it was like low risk for them. I thought $500 was like the perfect number, that it was like, it's a low investment into your career. If it was like $2,000, that's now like, you have to think about that a little bit. But for an artist and the expense of everything, like just to get a studio session for like a week is like, $1,000, $2,000 to do an album. So I figured $500 to do a video for your single would probably be a no-brainer.
That's smart. That's smart outlook. A lot of that logic is, yeah, that's really.
Yeah, I already had Avid. I had the camera. I had the skills on how to edit. The one thing I didn't have was the skills on how to direct. Yeah. So I kind of just was always winging it. And I watch back the videos now, and like I understand what I was trying to do. And I wasn't far from like a cohesive piece. So like looking back on them now, I'm just like, damn, this is actually like, except for the very first music video I did, which was trash. The ones where like I kind of evolved a little bit, I watch back now, and I'm like, these are like okay. Like obviously compared to the peer group I'm in and like my taste level now, they're awful. But like as somebody who's just starting out, like if I saw those videos from like another up and coming director, I'd be like, okay, you have like taste and understanding of like pacing and rhythm and color theory. And I was like, okay, I'm like, you're gonna get it. I feel it.
So going along with that, now that you've kind of set yourself up and you're in that professional space, what are some of the some of your favorite projects that you've worked on, whether it was, more amateur during those amateur days, those starving artist periods, or maybe something more professional that you've done more recently. What is your favorite thing that you've done?
Man, it always goes back to any of the things I did with Beats by Dre and Rashidi. Oh, those are always fun. Like any of those are like easily my favorites because those are just like artistry at its top performance. It's just like there's zero room for error when you're working with them. So it's like it's a little bit of pressure, but at the same time, it's like good pressure because like you have to just be on your toes all the time. There's a music video I did in like 2015 where we lit a house on fire. And to this day, that's like one of my favorite videos we've done. I mean, it's like very simple when it comes to like narrative structure and character arc. Like it's very easy to understand and digestible. The metaphoric purposes behind it, I thought were the funnest part, where it's like he's in this house. We built like a 20-foot by like 14-foot like bedroom in the middle of a desert and on private property on a farm up in like San Bernardino or something. And we built this bedroom and we hired pyrotechnicians and everybody come out. We had like a water truck and we had like the whole nine to make it safe. And like as in the narrative world, as the relationship goes downhill, the room that he's in starts to light on fire. So I thought that was really dope, but it's super digestible. There's nothing overwhelming about it. If anybody can say it's pretty simple, actually, it's just the wow factor is like you guys actually lit a house on fire or a bedroom. So I think when it comes to like A to Z structure, like pre-production, production, post, like that video is probably one of the funnest I've done. I did another one with like Big Sean, where it's all race car stuff on a racetrack. That was pretty fun because that was like a good. I've done car work before, right? But this one was the one where we had like choreographed car work. So it wasn't just like, all right, I drive and we'll film it. It's like I have to block out a race and then a narrative arc for that race. And like who wins at what point in time does the other car get in front of the other car? And like, is there any like, do they cut them off and slow down? Or like, like how do we build tension with just two cars driving and no dialogue? So that was something where I was like, all right, like that's going to be fun to do. So I don't think there's like projects that I would consider like the funnest. I think there's little things in each project that I try to implement to either like push something or push myself to be more creative and on point. And those things, those are like the things I remember. I'm just like, that was fun to do.
That's dope. One thing we always talk about is self-care, because I feel like that, especially in the industry where there's a lot of hours, especially entertainment, those hours can become overwhelming for some people who are new in that space, but even a lot as you're going project after project after project. So how do you take care of yourself? Because self-care is also attached to creativity. So how do you take care of yourself and make sure you still stay creative within that space?
I mean, if I'm going to be transparent, I'm still working on that.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, you could put a little bit of gas in my tank and I can go for like 6 months, just nonstop. Like, it's not that hard for me. There are times I think when it comes to like work-life balance, I think I have that down pretty good, but it's to like the minimalistic level. Like, I feel like I have that balance enough to where my girlfriend isn't going to get mad at me. You know what I mean? Like it's at the bare minimum. Like if I went any more into work, it would now cause problems, right? Mm-hmm. So what I do think if we're being transparent, like the one thing I've been trying to work on is like self-care, yeah, but more like mental health and like my the psyche of the industry where you go like for the last 5 days, like I've had my Instagram notifications turned off. I've had Twitter off. Clubhouse I turned off. Like that should like, but
that's a dark hole.
Yeah. So like I just take like just breaks, and as much as I love seeing like my peers achieve success and go here and go there, and the one thing I hate seeing is like if I'm bidding on a project and then I see it on my timeline and then it's like obviously very opinion based because it's subjective. But if I don't think it's good, I get a little butthurt because I'm like, man, like that had the potential to be really dope. And subjectively, I think my idea was pretty cool. And this is what they went with. Not saying that the idea that they went with is bad, but in my head, which I think every artist does, especially if they're competing, you watch something and you're just like, I mean, there's probably people that watch the videos that I want that's just like, this is terrible. I'm like, you know what? You're absolutely fine to have that opinion. You know what I mean? And you know what? In some sense, you're probably right. But art is subjective and there's an audience for everybody, so that's one thing I'm trying to work on. It's just like not dwell so much into other people's work and think less of mine, because I know a lot of my friends go through that as well. So I'm just trying to like, just be happy with what I'm doing and get better at what I'm doing, and then kind of just look through, just a small little circle and just focus on one little thing at a time versus like the whole industry, because then that's how you go through a dark hole.
What would you say? And before I go there, but I feel like I definitely agree, because I feel like mental health and trying to figure out what works for you is an ongoing process, because your life is constantly changing within that space. And I think that's the balancing act of it, is figuring out, all right, does this work for me, or does this not work for me? And I think you can never look at it as just like, oh, I've reached the finish line. There's always going to be adjustments that need to be made within that space.
Yeah, I mean, a couple of if you met the finish line, just retire.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, that's what if you're the best at something, then just quit. Because like, what's the point? You know what I mean? Like, I feel like those two things don't exist. There's always something to learn, and there's always, in my opinion, somebody better than you. And like, if you're a fan of healthy competitive nature, then you just keep going and just keep kind of like putting on the sparring gloves and trying to out create each other in obviously a friendly way. But yeah, I don't believe in like the best or the end of the road, because there's always somebody right around the corner that's just like, surprise, like, and you're like, where did you come from? Like,
hey, who are you?
Yeah, and why are you so dope? Like,
Why
damn it.
Yeah, I agree with that. I always like to think of a quote unquote I made it moment. For you, what did that look like?
I don't think it's even happened yet, to be honest. I don't think it'll ever happen.
Okay.
I don't think that I just don't. I mean, maybe if I do, I think even if I did like an 8-figure film, I still would be like, because here's the thing, it's like, everybody can kill it once, but the hard part is to kill it twice.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing with boxing. It's like, it's easy to knock somebody out once, but like, can you do it twice? And then once you do it twice, it's like, okay, like he's starting to get it. So I think it's going to be a while for that moment to happen for me. And I think even when it does happen, I'm still going to be like, nope, like, nope, not yet. Because I feel like also admitting that you're letting off the gas a little bit. You're just like, I made it, so like I can just chill. And it's kind of like a fighter after he wins a fight and the training camp's over, he like parties for 6 months and goes back. Like, I don't want that 6-month party. I never want that. I always want to just be like, let's go. Like, we accomplished something cool, and that's what's next.
Yeah. That constant elevation of looking for kind of the next goal or accomplishment that you can set for yourself is interesting.
Yeah. And I mean, for me, it doesn't necessarily need to be like, I don't always need to like keep raising the bar. Like, if I do something and I'm like, what's next? And that next thing's down here, that's fine.
Right.
I just want to keep going. Cause like, like where I'm from, especially, it's like, there's not a lot of options. And when you find an option and you're good at it, it's kind of like, you're just like, I don't want to fuck this up, like, I don't want to like, stop it. Cause like, this is the only thing. I mean, filmmaking was the only thing that I ever could think of that I was like naturally, in my opinion, kind of good at. So it's like, for me, it's kind of like, that the risk mitigation of slowing down is always in the back of my head, where I'm like, if I slow down, then what does that mean?
Yeah.
Like, do I have to build that momentum back up? Is it okay to slow down? Because I haven't tested it out yet. I think I've been going at a very good speed and pace for the last 10 years. Not fast enough to burn myself out, but not slow enough to psych myself out. So I think I found that good, cruise control where I can just keep going and not, burn myself out.
I got one more question for you before we wrap up that.
Keep them coming.
I like because most people focus in on like the next thing. How did you become okay with like not always trying to elevate? Because I know that's a hard thing. Most people are chasing that, like, all right, I just did a $10,000 job. So now I'm only doing $10,000 to $20,000 jobs, right? How did you not get stuck within that space and you were okay with doing like a big job and then a smaller job or something of that nature?
Well, I mean, the jobs that I accept are the jobs that I thoroughly enjoy. And also the jobs that I can sneak something new for myself in there. So, like, I guess, like, for example, like in 2018, I did a feature where the very last scene we blow up Monte Carlo, right? So, like, that's the climax of that scene. That was the most expensive production day. We literally took a old school Monte Carlo, like I think not the same one, but the same year and style as the one Training Day. We blew that shit up. And then right after that, I go back into like branded content, which is like, small turnover things. But like for me, it's like I always try to find small things to slide into the project that I could use as like a tool set for the future. So it's like, the next video I did was a very simple like bathing suit thing for this brand, but I was like, let's shoot underwater. And we shot underwater. So for that one, I was like, I'm just building all these tools for when I do like, get like a huge feature film. They're like, have you, done pyro stuff? I'm like, yeah, I blew up in Monte Carlo. How much underwater stuff have you done? I've done countless hours of underwater stuff. Have you done car to car? Yeah, I've done car to car. And then I've also blown up that car, like I just mentioned earlier. You know what I mean? So I'm just trying to find like little skill sets that, like, if you did a feature film, you would pretty much see all of that in the film, whether it be like action, drama, rom-com. Like, I'm just trying to do little things that I'm like in the back of my head in the future, even if it's on a smaller scale, I'll still have that creative muscle memory. Just be like, oh, I've done this like a million times. Like now we're just doing it with like Ryan Gosling or something. You know what I mean? Like, yeah. So that's what I try to find in like little projects where I'm just like, how do I continue to sharpen like my creative muscle memory? So when I do come across something that's a little foreign in the future, it's not so foreign. And like I can still be like natural and creatively in charge and, keep the anxiety down low and, just be level headed with everything, knowing like, okay, I've done this like a million times, like this should be no different. And then that way it's easier to risk mitigate. It's easier to come up with creative options on the fly because I'm not worried about how I'm going to do it because I've already done it. Now I'm worried about how I'm going to do it in this context. So that's why I don't necessarily find an issue with going big and then small and medium and small and big. It's like, as long as I can put stuff, because I would rather do that than do the same big video over and over again and like just do the same concept or do what I know that I'm good at or just, repeat, recycle and rinse, you know what I mean? Just like, I'd rather like go around and like just practice random shit than just do like the same thing over and over again, which is, not fun or not constructive to like growth. It's like, imagine if a basketball player just did free throws for 10 years. You know what I mean? He'd be really good at free throws.
Yeah.
But once he's out the key, once he's in, it's like once he's in the paint, like he's not going to be able to make a three or a layup ever. Yeah. So he's just really good at free throws and like, that's it. So that's what that's what I'm trying to do with myself. Is just be more well-rounded versus doing like the same shit over and over again.
Yeah. That reminds me, I don't know why that came to my mind, but it reminds me of like when Jay-Z put out Magna Carta, which is not one of my favorite albums, but the performance that he did at the art gallery to have that fan-to-fan interaction because he hadn't had that for so long. You know what I mean? Do you remember that video?
Yeah, I think Yeah, I do.
Yeah. That reminds me of like going from like that high to low to like, because even big celebrities need that same type of thing. And like everybody needs that because that's the true space of growth and building out your toolkit. But like for him, he was at that point just doing, different big stadiums and things of that nature. And he didn't have that close reaction anymore. So I really like that outlook. And I think a lot of our listeners could utilize that because you can get stuck in the rut of just saying, I'm only doing these type of projects. And that doesn't truly benefit you because now you don't have as wide of an arsenal within that space.
Yeah, I mean, if just I think people are so caught up. It's like once you get to a certain level, you have to maintain like this look or image or like perception that you're only doing this. But I mean, look at like a lot of these A-list actors that are doing like, Marvel and then go down to like indie films to like reconnect with the industry.
Yeah.
Because like Tom Holland can only be Spider-Man for so long before people are like, all right, we get it. And then he goes and does like, the Cherry, or I can't remember the other one with The Devil Where Art Thou or something, like he just does like more of these like abstract kind of, people wouldn't expect him in those performances. And, it just kind of regrounds him in a sense. And I feel like that's a good takeaway for just other people to, even in different industries. It's like, you don't have to like be gunning for the top. It's okay to do something else, whether it's higher or lower, as long as it adds to your toolkit. And if you're okay with that, and like, who gives a shit what other people think? Like, like.
Yep. Henry, any other questions you got?
Well, you just kind of gave us a good piece of advice there, but is there anything else that you can kind of say to rising filmmakers or people trying to break into that film industry? Like, how can you get yourself out there? Like, should you be working on any project you can get? Or like, how do you really get there and get to a point where you're happy with your work?
I mean, I think that's, I feel like, and this is going to be totally subjective. I think it's easier for people to find you as a target for something if you make it easier for them to find you. And if you're spread out, if you're in, it's okay to be this. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it, but if you're like a director, producer, DP, heart surgeon, child therapist, like enter career choice here, it's like people don't know what to hire you as or what to bring you on as, right? So, and I'm not saying not do all those things, but I figured for me it was a lot easier to, I mean, and I wasn't confident with it in the very beginning, but like I was like, I want to be an editor, and I went for that, right? I did everything, of course I did side jobs. Of course I was PAing, and of course I was, doing UPM stuff, and of course I was doing everything else. But every waking moment went to being an editor. And then when I learned that, okay, I worked with this director on a feature film and I'm editing it, and I feel like I could do this, my entire, gear switched to directing, right? So I think the answer to that is, even if it changes, just find something you think you want to do and just go for that. And just because once you become that, it's a lot easier for people. It's like a sniper versus a shotgun approach. If you have a shotgun, you're just shooting it everywhere and hopefully something lands. And if you have a sniper, you're going to hit it. So make it easy for people to hit your target. Make it easy for people to want to hire you. So if you, want to be the best PA in the goddamn world, you know what I mean? Like, there's nothing wrong with that. Just make that known and make sure everybody knows that. And then make sure you get on every set. And then you are the best PA in the world. And then from there, you can learn other, position or roles. And if you want to be a cinematographer, like, just be that and make sure that everyone knows that you want to be that. And then just keep pushing forward. But it's like when I see an Instagram, like director, DP, producer, everything, I just like, I don't know what to hire you as. Like, I don't know what your strength is. And if you really like think about it, if you're doing all these 4 different things, that means if I hire you as a DP, I'm getting 25%, because the other 75 or whatever remaining balance is your head's on those other tasks, other roles. You're balancing all these other things. I don't want to hire 25% of somebody. I want to hire 100% of somebody. So that's just kind of like where I thought that I did pretty good at really just zoning in on what I wanted to do and not confuse people with what I did. So just pick something. And even if it changes, that's fine. Let it change. But just pick something and try it out. And if it doesn't work, throw it to the side, keep moving on.
And then my last question for you is, and this is actually for all of us, but if you had to describe the last few days or week and pair it with a song, artist, or album, what would it be and why?
Man. All right, there's two of them. Actually, I have to pick one.
You can pick two.
All right, I would say this is really hard because I've actually had like a pretty decent week, but I'm always in like, when people like have their workout playlist, like I have that but it's just all the time. And it's not even for working out. It's just like, I got to keep the vibe right. So I'd say right now, it's probably Pusha T's Daytona.
Ooh.
Or no, that's the one with the Whitney Houston bathroom album cover, right?
Yep.
Okay, so yeah, that one. That's so funny that he just used that picture, which is like, this is my album cover. Or My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy, either one. So I feel like both of those have like aggressive like mood arcs. Like you can find a song for, like I could listen to Blame Game like every minute of every day. So I feel like those best describe like kind of how, like, even if I'm calm, that's how my energy is. I'm just like, let's go.
I love that. That's a good one. What about you, Henry?
Well, it kind of varies week to week, I guess. I mean, since we lost MF Doom, that's been probably my number one artist.
Yeah.
I've just been running through that entire discography over and over again. But as of recently, I've gotten more into TV Girl. They're a little hypno pop band out of Echo Park. I've been on them for a couple years now before TikTok made them famous. So I just want to put that in there that I was here before them.
Disclaimer.
I'm originally on that. I'm in the top 1.1% of their fan base. So before I get called out for being a poser.
No, I like that. I'm gonna pick this song called Young G's off Puff Daddy's No Way Out album. I'm taking it. I don't know how I found that song. I didn't even know that song, but it's him, Biggie, and Jay-Z on it. And it's just you feel the bounce of like Puffy rebranding himself, but then you feel the youthfulness of Jay-Z and Biggie on that, and just like that beautiful competition of bars between Jay-Z and Biggie, which I feel like they had a great relationship with that. So I like that song. And yeah, that is our podcast. So what we like to do is always give a round of applause for our guests. So thank you so much. We appreciate you, Jesse, for jumping on here, giving us a lot of jewels, and just even volunteering your time to come and chat with our interns and our audience here on our podcast. So thanks so much. Any last words you want to leave us with?
Yeah, I mean, I want to be a friend of the show, so invite me back whenever.
Hey.
And yeah, I mean, I guess just go. I mean, don't let your foot off the gas. Keep it moving.
Definitely. And we will keep you as a friend of the show for sure. So thanks to our listeners, whether this is your morning routine, afternoon routine, or the thing you do before you go to sleep, we are out. Skirt, skirt.